What's up, Michael?
What is going on, Kelvin?
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Casual Talk. This is episode 11, and we are here the week after UFC 247, where Jon Jones defended his title against Dominic Reyes.
Yep, in a controversial match, and we're going to dive into that here.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and talk about the main event, Jon Jones and Dominic Reyes. Just quick thoughts.
Yeah, so just look, before we get into all the round by round stuff and who won and none of that, just on the surface, it was such an entertaining fight.
Yeah, great fight.
It's been a long time since I've been that hyped up and excited during a fight.
Mm-hmm.
It just, especially the first couple of rounds, it just had that feeling of that we were getting a classic. I just knew, through the first 3 rounds, I was like, this is the type of fight that we're going to be talking about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was exciting, an instant classic. I thoroughly enjoyed the fight. It was a great fight.
Me too. Yeah, that was a great showing from Dominic Reyes. As someone who hasn't had a lot of experience watching him, he put on a great performance.
Absolutely.
And I think Dana White was saying that he's a future of the light heavyweight division.
Yep.
He sure is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he sure is.
It's exactly what you want to see, right? Because, we're doing this podcast. There's podcasts all over. There's TV shows. And all we ever do is analyze fights and think about what's going to happen in the future, right?
Right.
And when you do that, you always go based off of what you've seen from certain fighters. Not just in their last fight, but what you've seen in every one of their fights, right?
Yeah.
Now, to Dominic's credit, a lot of his fights have been over fairly quickly. And he's able to use, his strengths, which is his left hand.
Yeah.
And he's got great kicks. So when you look at something like that, you only have a small sample size of what you can go off of, right?
Right.
And so when I was looking at this fight, thinking of what can this guy do to bring to Jon Jones, all you can really look at is what he's done so far in his fights, and then you can look at his attributes, his height, his weight, his athleticism, all that kind of stuff. When I put all of that together, as if we go back to the last week's episode, and you and I and a lot of other people did, we picked Jon Jones to win because we've seen such a broad category of performances from Jon Jones, where he's had to employ a myriad of different styles and different techniques to win fights. And this is exactly what you hope for when you see a fight. We saw so many things from Dominic Reyes that we had never seen before. You can truly say that this dude put on the performance of his life. It was a performance of a lifetime. And to get to watch that is just special.
Yeah, no, definitely. I got more out of Dominic Reyes than I did Jon Jones.
Yeah.
Jon Jones, I'm starting to see a slowdown.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that too.
Yeah,
in a way.
It's it's hard to say.
Weird.
It's hard to say, when it comes down to these situations, it's usually a little bit of both, right?
Sure.
But it's hard to say whether it's a slowdown from Jon Jones or whether there's just finally competition that's worthy. You know what I mean?
That could be it, because the first 3 rounds, he was getting up. So just a disclaimer, when we were watching it, unfortunately the stream was cutting in and out. So we didn't get to see the entire match from beginning to start within the first couple of rounds.
Mm-hmm.
But, just from looking at it, it just seems like Dominic Reyes was just landing more punches, being more effective with his punches. A couple of times we felt like he stunned him.
Yeah.
A couple of times. So, and then from rounds 4 to 5, Jon Jones started to pick it up. And, I just feel like at some point he's going to get to that stage, if he hasn't already. Some of these up-and-coming guys are just going to, have his number. And this was a close one. This is the closest one that I've seen than maybe the first
Alexander Gustafsson.
That fight.
Yeah.
And, he got lucky walking away from this fight.
Well,
Very lucky.
It's funny that you brought up the Gustafsson fight. I don't know if you saw this or not, but that fight got scored exactly the same as this fight, down to the round.
I saw that this morning.
Scoring. Yeah.
That's weird.
That's crazy.
Super weird.
Yeah.
Kudos to Dominic.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's an animal. I'm a fan of his now.
Right.
I didn't know much about him, but watching him fight, I want to see him again.
He opened a lot of eyes.
He did.
Yeah.
He really did. And so that kind of leads into our next question. Is an immediate rematch expected? Is that what you want to see next?
Man, it's a tough one for me because even though I'm a fan of Jon Jones, I'm a fan of greatness. I'm a fan of what he's done. I can't help but to feel like I would have been insanely excited for Dominic, and I'll admit that I probably wanted Dominic to win more than I wanted John Jones to win.
Yeah, you did.
While I was watching, while I was watching the
you
fight.
Wouldn't shut up.
I know. Yeah, I was excited. But the thing that terrifies me is that a balloon just popped up in here.
I know.
The thing that makes me a little bit nervous, and maybe I'm guilty of underestimating Dominic Reyes again. But I just feel like this was his opportunity to win this fight, you know, and he, in my opinion, did win the fight.
Okay.
And we all know what John Jones does in rematches.
Sure.
You know,
we've seen
there's no two better examples than DC and Alexander Gustafsson. He fought them both twice. Mm-hmm. He went all 5 rounds the first time with both of them. Well, Alex
except for DC.
Yeah, DC.
I think I think he knocked him out. I think he hit him with a leg kick, and then
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
In the first match, he went 5 rounds with both of them, and in the second match, he finished both of them before the championship. rounds.
Okay.
You know, so there's just this thing with John Jones where, I mean, I've heard a couple people describe him as almost like a computer. He downloads the information from you. He downloads your patterns, your movement, and he's just so incredibly effective a second time. You know, like beating John Jones once is hard enough. Beating him twice, that's rough. You know.
Well, let me ask you, because I want to ask, when you were watching the fight, who did you think won this fight?
I thought Dominic,
because that's the entire debate. You thought, okay.
Yeah, I thought Dominic won the fight.
So right after the match ended, and we were shocked because initially, when we were leading up to the scorecards, you came up to me and you were like, "Is this finally it? Are we about to see John Jones lose, or is he gonna finally lose?"
Yeah.
And I kept telling you, "Well, let's wait. I've seen crazy shit, but let's wait." Sure enough, when they announced an unanimous decision towards John Jones. Yeah. We were all shocked.
Yeah.
We were all shocked.
Because maybe a loss, but a unanimous decision.
Right.
I didn't see that coming.
For me, the fight was very close. Again, it's unfair for me to give you who I thought won because there were, unfortunately for me and Kelvin, when we were watching the stream at a person's house, it just kept cutting it off. So I didn't get to see the entire fight in its entire, how you want to say it, throughout the entire fight, basically. I didn't get to see it. I just feel like it's unfair for me to give you an honest opinion. I did feel like rounds 4 and 5, those were John Jones's rounds. And I felt like round 1 and 2, I scored them as Dominic Reyes. The third one was the one where it kept cutting out in and out when we were watching it. So I have to watch it again, to be honest. But it seems like round 2 and 3 are where most of the controversial, debate is between those rounds. Because some people have John Jones winning certain rounds. Some people have Dominic Reyes. Even the judges were split between those 2 rounds. So, I knew it was going to be controversial. I knew people were going to say he got robbed. And I was telling you, I hate when people say that shit. Yeah. Like, that annoys the shit out of me. Right. When it's a close fight and it can go either way, it's not a fucking robbery. Right. Like, quit saying that, please. If one clear guy won the entire fight and for some weird reason everyone agrees with it, but then he loses, that's a robbery. But if you go on Twitter, you're going to see people who agree with John Jones that he won that fight. You're going to see people that say Dominic Reyes. Even some fighters were on Twitter voicing their opinion that they thought John Jones won. Yeah. So there seems to be, a two-sided debate on this.
I think it's also the magnitude of the fight too. If it would have been it would have been like a prelim fight that was this close. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's kind of almost like if you think about I always make the analogy that John Jones is like the New England Patriots of MMA.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and it's kind of like anybody that blows a 28-3 lead in any game is going to get made fun of, right? Yeah. But for the Falcons, I feel like it's going to be an eternal thing because they were that close to beating the Patriots.
They were that close.
They were that close to beating that, that enterprise that is the Patriots. I think it's the same thing in this case. I think it was a close fight, but I think the reason people are so hung up on it is because we were that close from something incredible happened.
That would have been crazy. But it happens all the time. You hear robbery all the time, and it needs to stop, guys. You need to just take a step back and look at the fight as what it is. It's a close fight.
Right.
People have different opinions. People view it differently. The judges even viewed it differently, you know? It's not a robbery. It's controversial.
Yeah.
That's a better way of wording it. But to say someone got robbed, come on.
Yeah. And to be fair, also, like you were saying, not only because of, and to make things clear, we usually pay for fights. We just got the opportunity to. I mean, it wasn't even our decision.
I will pay for the next fight.
Absolutely,
you best believe that shit.
But even if it wasn't all laggy or whatever, it's always different when you rewatch a fight, whatever it be, a month later, whatever. We went to DC versus Stipe 2, that card in Anaheim, and we were there watching Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa, and at the fight, we both thought Yoel had won the fight, and then we both rewatched it, and then when we watched it, we both thought
it was
Paulo
clear.
won.
To me, I was like, okay, yeah, I saw. It's funny how it's viewed that way, you know? You have to rewatch it and look at it in a different angle and take your emotion out of it, because fight night is a lot of emotion, right?
Absolutely.
You're like on your seat, you're like ready, and you know, when there's a big punch, everyone goes crazy, so you're assuming he's taking the fight.
Absolutely.
But when you watch it from a different aspect, it's totally different.
And let's just get down to the nitty gritty now. So we're talking about, you know, we just mentioned how we both thought it was a close fight, and how watching it in the moment, you know, it's different, and we both acknowledge that if we rewatch it, we could, you know, potentially see something different.
Sure.
However, if we're looking at this on paper, which literally we have the paper in front of us, on paper, it looks like Dominic Reyes won this fight.
Absolutely. So we have our stats here in front of us, but rounds 1, 2, and 3, Dominic landed more of the strikes than John Jones. Round 4 and 5, Jones was the clear winner there. But paper, I mean, you're right there. Total strikes, Dominic Reyes outlanded John Jones. John Jones did had 2 takedowns, but those were in his winning rounds that we both agreed on, 4 and 5.
So the thing is, we were talking about this before we started recording also. Dominic Reyes unanimously won round 1. All 3 judges gave him round 1. And
yes, they did.
We can see why that happened. I mean, Dominic Reyes in total strikes outlanded him 23-17. And John attempted two takedowns, which were both unsuccessful, right?
The first round, yes.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear why Dominic won that fight. I don't think there's any argument there. However, in the second round, you have no takedown attempts from either guy, and Dominic Reyes outstruck him 33-22. He landed 11 more strikes than John Jones did.
He did.
Yet 2 judges gave round 2 to John Jones.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I know there's a lot of bias out there in Twitter. It's a natural thing in anything that you discuss, right? But if we're talking about this unbiasedly, I want to understand how 2 judges are going to give the round to John Jones when there's no takedowns to take into consideration.
Correct.
And in just striking, there's a clear difference in striking differential between Dominic and John Jones.
Right.
And Michael brought up the judging criteria for MMA, which was established in 2017, I believe, or approved in 2016.
Correct.
And it clearly states that effective striking and grappling shall be the first priority when judging a round.
Exactly.
Right? And if there's no grappling to go off of and striking is the priority, and the striking differential for Dominic Reyes, I want to understand how John Jones gets the round on 2 judges' scorecards.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit tough.
Agree. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, we're never going to know what their thinking was in those judges unless they come out and say something. But, you know, it's just interesting to see or think, you know, what was in their mindset. What fight were they watching? Again, I mean, these were boxing judges. You know, are they looking at it from a boxing aspect? You know, it's just stuff like that kind of comes to question.
Right. And then, I mean, if we're still talking about, you know, how things are judged, if beyond effective striking and grappling, the next thing that gets considered is aggressiveness, right?
Correct.
And we were talking about this earlier, and this comes down to just fighting styles. But it seemed like Dominic Reyes would only really rush forward or move forward whenever he was attacking or linking together strikes and combinations. While John Jones, that's just his style. He's constantly
pushing forward.
He
is, and
nice
he was
and slowly and keeping things controlled.
Yeah, he was.
Right. So okay, that's fine if you want to consider that. You know that John Jones was moving forward. We're still taking a look at the priority, which is striking,
effective striking and grappling.
Right.
And for some reason, these judges felt like there wasn't enough there.
Right.
To, you know, give Dominic Reyes a clear advantage,
which is wild. Now.
Yeah.
And this is where semantics comes into play, right? Because it says effective striking and grappling. Now, I mean, if there's anybody out there that knows better than us, let us know. That's why we're doing this, right? But Dominic Reyes did land more strikes, right? In
Effective strikes, right?
He landed 11 more strikes.
Yeah.
But John Jones, I guess, was more effective because he landed a higher percentage of the strikes that he threw.
That's another thing, too.
Does that come into play?
Yeah. I mean,
John Jones landed 59% of his punches or strikes, and Dominic landed 48%.
Yeah. And in round 1, John Jones landed 62% compared to Dominic Reyes at 38.
But Dominic won that round.
We both agree, and I'm sure everyone else agreed, Dominic won that first round.
Yeah,
Correct.
so if in both rounds 1 and 2,
okay,
Dominic landed more strikes.
Correct.
But Jones landed a higher percentage, right? They're identical in that sense.
Sure.
How does Dominic get round 1 but not round 2?
Yes, that's the question. And if you look at round 3, where for me that was the very close one.
Yeah.
Dominic Reyes landed more strikes, but if you look at that percentage, it's very close.
It is, and that's a round where Dominic A landed more strikes.
He did.
B landed a higher percentage of strikes, and 3 stuffed 2 takedowns from John Jones.
Yes, he did.
That's a clear win in my book.
Sure.
For the round.
Sure.
And again, 2 judges gave round 3 to John Jones. I don't get it. I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't understand how.
You know, that's just one of those things where it's just you just scratch your head.
Right. Now rounds 4 and 5, I don't think there's any debate.
No. So I mean, if we look at the numbers, and I'll post this up for you guys to see as we're talking through it. But
Jones landed more strikes.
Yes, he did.
Was more effective in the strikes and landed takedowns in both of the rounds.
Correct.
That's clear as day.
Yes.
Those 2 rounds are John Jones's.
Yeah. I don't know. And you know what? Another question that came to me is, this fight was in Texas.
Yeah.
Or Houston, right? I don't know how many MMA fights are held in Houston. Not a lot, I'm assuming, right?
I mean,
because it seems like Las Vegas is the one that's you see most of MMA fights.
Las
there.
Vegas, California,
at least
and
for
New
the
York.
pay-per-views.
Yeah, Las Vegas, California, and New York, or Nevada,
right?
California, and New York are getting annual fights there.
Right. So I heard through the UFC feed, Joe Rogan or John Anik saying that this was the first time they did a pay-per-view in Houston since UFC 60 something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, we can look at it, but that was a long time ago. So that also adds to the question is, with holding an MMA fight in Houston, maybe they're just not up to par with where Vegas is, and eventually New York is starting to get there, and where California is, right, where these guys are more experienced with the sport than a state like Texas.
Right. I mean, we heard that conversation
because we saw judges that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
I was telling you, who the fuck is that guy?
Well, Chris Lee I recognize, but Joe Solis and I've heard Marcos Rosales also, but this Joe Solis guy, which is under the microscope this whole week.
Yes, he is. And you know what? Let's talk about his scorecard.
4-1.
Even if let's just say that I agree John Jones won.
Yeah, right.
I am not I'll even tell you John Jones winning 4-1.
Right.
Yeah, that's too much. Yeah, that's too much. He had John Jones essentially winning 4 rounds, 4-1.
Right.
I don't know what fight he was seeing. He was clearly not seeing the same fight me and you were watching.
Right.
Chris Lee and Marcos Rosales.
Yeah.
Close fight. Okay.
I mean, Marcos gave Dominic round 3.
Sure.
He got that right.
Sure. And again, between those 2 judges, it seems like round 2 and 3 seem to be, where it was close for them, right?
Yeah.
One guy had Dominic Reyes winning round. Let me see. One guy, or Chris Lee had Dominic Reyes winning round 2. The other guy had John Jones. So it seems like those 2 rounds were really controversial.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, if you add up their scores, 48, 47, very close.
Yeah.
The 49-46, when I heard that, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
This is what we got in our hands.
Right.
And I can imagine Joe Rogan being pissed off.
Oh,
about
yeah,
that.
man. I mean, he's as passionate about the sport as it gets.
He is. Well, actually, so let's talk about it. I mean, Joe Rogan is very adamant about having MMA experts judging.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear that would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's no argument about that.
Absolutely.
I think having a boxing-minded judge score an MMA fight is just not going to work.
Right.
And we're going to have these issues.
Right.
I think if you have judges who have a background in MMA and understand the sport, I think you'll see much better judging.
Yeah.
And which lead to a much better scorecard for these judges and analyzing these fights.
And what I've been saying leading up to today's episode is there needs to be a more clear consensus on, because for example, we all know that John landed those 2 takedowns towards the end, right? We always talk about how should those be awarded? How should those be
and let's be fair, those two takedowns, he did not effectively land punches once he got those takedowns.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't completely clear on that yet. But the rules clearly state how you should take those into consideration.
And that got changed recently.
It did. So it says here, successful execution of a takedown. Let's see. A successful takedown is not merely a changing of position, but the establishment of an attack from the use of a takedown.
Correct.
And even though John, to his credit, landed those 2 takedowns, Dominic was able to get right back up. He didn't suffer anything once he got taken down.
Yes. So, I mean, a person that we were watching the fight with, he was saying, well, he got 2 takedowns. That's not enough.
Right.
If you land a takedown but don't do any damage with it, that should not be considered.
Like, look at Khabib, for example. Can you imagine if Khabib took down people with the ease that he currently takes them down, but people just got back up again, or he just laid and prayed?
Yeah.
He doesn't do that. He takes people down. He starts subbing them.
Yes.
He starts attacking them.
He starts doing damage, and that's the key thing, damage. You must do effective damage. And just merely having a takedown is not enough for me.
Right.
And I would agree. Most people would agree too.
But in this case, whatever, right? Like John outstruck him, had higher percentage in those 2 rounds, and landed the takedowns. Okay, fine, give it to him.
Yeah.
So I mean, what does it really come down to? Does it come down to that really annoying adage that in order to beat the champ, you've got to beat the
champion? I heard Ario talking about that in his interview, I think yesterday or this morning, saying that you having to go out to beat the champion is bullshit.
It is.
I kind of agree with him. I see it both sides, right? I see, like, in essence, he is right. Having to go out and beat the champion is bullshit. I agree with him there.
I mean, I kind of, not necessarily to change the subject, but going off kilter for a minute. I just recently watched Rafael Lovato Jr. versus Gegard Mousasi again. I watched it last night, right? That fight was 2-2 going into the 5th round pretty clearly. And all credit in the world to Rafael Lovato, which we'll talk. Actually, I want to talk about that later on at the end of the show. But to all his credit, he won the 5th round. But he mostly run it with just like control, and a couple strikes.
Sure.
To me, it wasn't like he put a beat down on the champion, and he won. And in my opinion, he won that fight. And the judges gave him the fight. I wouldn't necessarily consider that he went out there and like beat the champion.
Right.
He just won the fight,
right.
which in my opinion should be the case in all fights.
Oh yeah.
If you win the fight, you won. You don't have to like put a beat down.
Right.
Or whatever. You won the fight. Period.
Correct. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that we are in a situation in the sport where you gotta beat the fighter, unfortunately. I mean, these scores card like these happen, unfortunately. They even happen in boxing.
Now, to be fair, there was also some questionable calls the whole night. I think there was like 4 split decisions on the night.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I mean, until changes happens, this seems to be the norm, right. Unfortunately. So
now, I mean, kind of, I guess to wrap things up on this one, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are saying it's a no-brainer. Me personally, I'm gonna wait just a little bit before I demand the rematch. I think to everybody though, I think it's pretty clear that a rematch should happen. I'm still a little bit crushed, even though I'm a fan of both guys. In my heart, I feel like Dominic won the fight, and I just would have been so unbelievably happy for him.
Right.
And I think John, to be fair, I feel like John would have got the immediate rematch and most likely won, probably.
Sure.
I just wanted Dominic. I wanted Dominic to get that opportunity, and I feel like he earned it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hold off on whether or not he should get an immediate rematch.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that shortly. But let's move on to the co-main event.
Okay. Yeah.
Valentina Shevchenko against
Katlyn
Chookagian.
So Katlyn Chookagian, a very worthy adversary, a great competitor.
Well, hold on. Yeah. I was fucking wrong. Okay, let's just go out and say that. I went on a limb on our last episode saying that she was gonna win. Yeah. I was wrong. Yeah. So I just want to. I'm owning it.
Yeah, I mean, I piggybacked on it. I piggybacked on it.
I was wrong.
Which, side note, I mean, with the kind of body frame that she has and the leg dexterity, the flexibility, and being coached by John Danaher, I feel like she should be a submachine.
I was a bit disappointed in her performance.
You know what? It's kind of a bit of a. I'm kind of torn on this one. I'm a bit disappointed in her because she didn't necessarily put on as competitive a fight as I thought she would have.
Correct. That was my thinking.
But she did do something. You know what? I'll give. We were both talking about how dominant these two champions are, right? Jon Jones and Valentina. And then when people get in against both of these people, they tend to not be able to play their game either because of how good the champions are, or because of they're a little bit intimidated, or what have you. But like, you take a look at a guy like Anthony Smith, who never really got going against Jon Jones. It looked like the moment was a little bit too big for him.
Right.
Valentina does the same thing to certain people. Something that I like about both of these fighters, Dominic and Caitlin, was that they both seemed like they were going to fight their fight. Caitlin, to me, at least in the first 2 rounds, didn't seem necessarily intimidated by Valentina in terms of how she was playing her game. She was moving the way she normally does. She was countering the way she normally does. There were a couple, and even Joe Rogan was pointing this out. It was like she wasn't fully extending on some of her kicks and stuff like that, which, could be because she was giving that much respect to Valentina. But man, is Valentina
she's
absolute
great. Yeah,
murderer.
she's great.
Good Lord.
She's great.
How do you beat that woman?
I know how. Amanda Nunes.
Oh,
I think
boy.
she's the woman that's gonna beat her.
Talk about controversial fights. A lot of people still feel like Valentina won those fights, but
that's a discussion for another podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. But man, is she good everywhere, man?
Yeah.
Her poise, her cage control, her striking is on another level. Her grappling, she's so strong.
She's just a scary person.
She really is.
She just has that in her. At any moment, she can just put it on you and put you to sleep. And I was very impressed, as I'm always with that girl.
Joe Rogan gets a lot of shit for calling her an assassin, but what other word can you? I mean, just look at her. She's such a nice person, right?
Yeah.
But when she's in there, she's not stiff, but she's so like controlled.
Yeah.
And the look on her face and the quickness. I mean, she literally looks like either a human that was born and bred to be a murderer, or like some sort of assassin robot or something, but she just looks like a killer, literally a killer.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I mean, you've hit it right on the nail. She's just an amazing fighter, and if we look at her division, there's up and coming talent, but I still think like she'll be a champion for a long time to come.
Yep.
But I can't quite pinpoint what happened with that fight from Caitlin's side.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed that she wasn't more effective in her striking.
I was disappointed that she wasn't more effective in her ground game.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned her coach,
John Danaher.
Yeah, and we saw him on the screen.
Yeah, because I think, and with all due respect to the rest of the roster, I think anybody that gets in there with her is going to be at a striking disadvantage, right? We all know how dominant of a striker she is. I feel like the ground game is. I mean, Caitlin Chukagian has leg dexterity and flexibility that I don't know if I've ever seen before. It's crazy.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe that'll be a part of a game that she develops even more. But I will say this: even though she got shut out and beat, I'm still looking forward to seeing what Caitlin has to offer, because this is only her 3rd loss, and it's the first time she's ever been finished.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything that we've mentioned for UFC or the co-main event.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about any. So
man. Were there any notable fights for you that stood out?
Yeah. I mean, let's keep going down real quick. I do want to mention between Justin Tafa and Juan Adams.
Is that the Yoel Romero guy you were raving about?
No. That's okay. We'll get to that.
When you told me what happened to him, I was laughing my ass off.
I'm not changing my mind. I'm still really high on that guy. But yeah, we'll get to that. Justin Tafa, gets his UFC debut on the Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya card, and gets absolutely sparked by an up-and-comer from the Contender Series, Yorgan De Castro, right? I was bummed out for Tafa, but he gets back in here with Juan Adams, who's coming off of 2 losses, right? Another Contender Series guy. I had high hopes for Juan Adams, man. He had a 100% finish rate coming into the UFC. Won his first fight in the UFC by finish.
Okay.
Right? And then, we talked about his history on last week's episode, but just bummed for Juan Adams. Who knows what his future holds? Maybe he gets cut. I don't know. Justin Tafa, though, dude's got great hands, and he comes for it. So I'm excited to see that guy. Mirsad Bektic versus Dan Ige. Mm-hmm. We were talking about this as being an important fight for the featherweight division. Great fight. Mm-hmm. Great fight. I think both guys, they're both younger. I think they're the future of the division in this sense. Not the future of the division necessarily in saying that like they're either of them are going to be champions.
Okay.
But the future of the division in terms of they're going to be like the meat and potatoes right in the middle of that featherweight division, right?
Okay.
I don't want to call them gatekeepers, but they're definitely going to be the competition for up and comers in the featherweight division.
Okay.
And I liked what I saw from both of them.
Okay.
Derek Lewis versus Ilir
I was
Latifi.
a bit disappointed
Same
on that
here,
one.
yeah.
Especially on Derek. Actually, both fighters.
Well, let's point this out first, though. Who knows how much of this has come out from Derek Lewis that he's got some sort of life-threatening condition.
Yeah.
Who knows how much of that has to do?
If that played into it at all.
Because the last time that we were saying this during the fight is this will be now the second time that Derek Lewis really disappoints, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first one being the Francis Ngannou fight,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which we had a brilliant opportunity because he was fighting a stuck and frozen Francis, and he didn't throw really anything. It came out after the fight that he was dealing with really bad back issues, right?
Okay.
So you have to wonder how much of that played into this game. But yeah, man, I was disappointed. I know Ilir is a tough guy, a strong guy, and a veteran. But
I was very disappointed in him.
Yeah,
even more so. I mean, he didn't look like he wanted really to be aggressive at all. He just, I don't know what it was.
He didn't want to stand in front of him.
That's what it was. I mean, he was, at some points, he just wanted to get him against the clinch.
Which I get it. I mean, I predicted Derek Lewis to win this fight because we all know, in martial arts, how much size differences play down a little bit. Yeah. But especially when you get into the heavyweight division, it's got to be.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about weight. If you just look at the two guys, right? Derek is just.
He's huge.
It's like I think I said this last week. It's like comparing an F350 to an F150.
Yeah.
Right.
Big difference.
And it was pretty clear that Ilir didn't want any of that.
So then, do you think that this might be his last fight?
Who?
Ilir.
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, I think
because if that's the way he's gonna come out in that division,
right?
Good Lord, have mercy on you.
But I mean, to his credit, he took flying knees from Derek, and he took a couple of punches from Derek. So maybe he thinks to himself like, if I've already faced one of the hardest punches in the division, and I was able to basically boss him around,
sure,
maybe I stay in the division.
Well, we'll see. But I mean, you're in a 260 plus division. These guys are gonna hit hard.
Yep.
And that's honestly what that division is.
Right.
Hard punches. So it's gonna be like that every fight. If you go against Francis, you expect the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, I mean, a bit of a disappointing fight. All the best to Derek Lewis. I hope everything's all right.
I do want to talk about, and I feel like we talked about that fight already.
Yeah.
The James,
oh my Lord.
What's his last name?
James Krause
against Trevin Giles.
Yes.
Fight of the night for me.
Yeah, dude, man,
what
an
a
exciting
fucking fight, man.
Man, all the
Great
respect
fight.
in the world to James Krause for stepping up like that.
Yeah.
Wow. In my opinion, man, no disrespect to Trevin Giles. He's a tough guy. He's a cop too. I respect the guy a lot, but in my opinion, man, to fight a guy in a lower weight class on no training camp, steps in last minute to win a split decision like that, it's a bit underwhelming.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think he won the fight, but
well, he did win the fight.
If you look at it in a certain way, James Krause won that fight.
I mean, I give respect to James too, because I mean, I think at the end of the second, we thought he was gonna get knocked out.
Yeah.
And he stood in there.
Man, oh
tough
man,
as fuck.
He
took heavy shots.
Damage. Yeah,
yes, he did.
Crazy.
I mean, kudos to him for taking that late notice
Pulling
fight.
out a split decision win over a tough guy.
Kudos to him.
Andrea Lee versus Lauren Murphy. I think it kind of flew under the radar a little bit with all the other stuff that we were talking about, but man, these two girls came to scrap. I loved it. I know there was a bit of controversy because I don't know if you heard about this, but one of the judges was on his phone apparently during the fight.
Saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that.
But man, let's just face it. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. We all rave about the top level female fighters in the UFC.
Okay.
But I feel like there's still a feeling out there, that women's MMA has less to offer than men's MMA. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes.
Sure.
And this is a message to those people out there that only know like the top tier women's fighters. There are women in this organization that come out to fucking fight, and that's what we got with Lauren Murphy and Andrea Lee. I thoroughly enjoyed the fight.
Awesome.
Chaos Williams, Alex Morono. Chaos came in and, like his name, came out throwing heavy, won the fight pretty quick. I was raving last week about
Miles Johns.
And I know he's cracking up about it.
When you told me that your boy got knocked out because
Yeah.
you're raving, I could not stop a laugh.
Which honestly,
sorry.
I'm not changing my tune. I still love the guy. He got caught, but all the props in the world of Mario Bautista. Awesome
Sure.
stuff. And that's about it. I mean, shout out to Andre Ewell too.
Did you catch the early prelims at all?
I did not. I was not able to.
Yeah, I wasn't either. So
I mean, I think that wraps up 247. Yeah.
yes, it does. We're gonna move on to what I'm gonna call our aftermatch segment. It's a shitty ass name, but work with me while we figure out a good way to name it. Basically, it's a segment where after each event, whether it's a pay-per-view or fight night, we're gonna talk about what's next for notable fighters in that particular fight night. So let me ask you, what is the fight to make next for Jon Jones?
So I think it depends here. I think if he's willing to stay at 205, right, and they're not trying to give the winner of this weekend's card a title shot.
That's correct, because this weekend will play. It's a big time play as far as what's next in the light heavyweight division.
Now, me putting my personal feelings aside, I feel like everybody is gonna think it's a no-brainer.
The rematch.
Yeah, the rematch.
Okay.
Right. And so after that, maybe I think the next person in line after the Dominic Reyes fight would be the winner of these two. However, I just don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
I think Jon Jones, either before he rematches Dominic Reyes or immediately after, is going to move up to heavyweight. And
So
try to fight Stipe.
so that's what you see happening.
Yes.
What would you like to see though? If you were a matchmaker, if you
Okay.
were Sean Shelby,
All right. So I think I'm gonna rush it and say that they're just going to rematch.
Do
Dominic
the
Reyes.
rematch?
Yeah.
so I agree with you. If I was Sean Shelby, the right thing to do is give Dominic Reyes his rematch
Mhm.
immediately. Probably sometime in the summer, maybe International Fight Week would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But that boy put on a great performance. He's a local kid from Victorville.
Yep.
So it's really nice to see local guys from our area step up in big fights
Yep.
and really make a name for himself. So the right thing to do is give him his rematch. Now, knowing Dana White, knowing the UFC, I'm not 100% sure that's going to happen.
Right.
I feel like everything's going to hinge on what happens this weekend between Corey Anderson and Jan
Blachowicz.
Jan
Blachowicz.
Blachowicz.
Yeah.
If for any reason we see a spectacular knockout from, let's say, Corey Anderson, that can change everything as far as matchmaking for Jon Jones.
Right.
Everything hinges on this weekend.
Right.
So we're going to see what happens. But, yes, the right thing to do is to give Dominic Reyes his rematch.
Yeah.
Our next thing is what's next for Dominic Reyes then.
Right.
Obviously, we agree, give him his rematch. But let's say that doesn't happen.
Okay.
What's next for Dominic Reyes?
So let's say hypothetically, Jon Jones doesn't want to give him the rematch and
Mhm.
wants to go up to heavyweight.
Okay. Or
Right.
wherever direction he
Or
goes. Correct.
whatever direction he goes.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know what his status is or when he's going to be available. But imagine Dominic Reyes versus Thiago Santos.
I was thinking that, dude. That's a
Yikes.
fucking fight.
Yikes.
That's a fight.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, do you have the rankings pulled up?
I do. I just pulled them up now.
Okay, so give me the top 4 in the lightweight division, and let's see if maybe
So
there's
it
a
goes
matchup
the
to be
champion
made.
the champion
Jon Jones, hold up.
in my heart. Number 1 contender Dominic. You got Thiago Santos,
And-
then you got
and number
Anthony,
2?
Yeah, and
Okay.
Thiago Santos is number 2.
Okay.
Then you got Anthony Smith, who I don't think is deserving of a rematch quite yet.
Okay.
You got DC, who's never fighting at light heavyweight.
Yeah, I
again,
don't
so
know
I'm
why
not
he's
sure.
in the rankings. Yeah.
You got Corey Anderson at 5 and Jan Blachowicz at 7. I'm sorry, at 6.
At
And they're
6.
fighting. You got Volkan Oezdemir, who, I mean, he won a
He
great
just
fight.
fought recently, right?
He
I
did.
mean,
He fought
not
Alexander Rakic, who I'm really high on. Also, I don't think that's in the cards. You got Alexander Gustafsson, who's been talking about coming back, but I don't think he would get a third rematch. A third title fight against John right away, especially after losing.
Right.
Glover Teixeira, who's on his way out.
Sure.
Alexander Rakic, who's on his way up, but
Okay.
lost recently to Volkan. Then you got Johnny Walker. And then, I don't think we really need to keep going, but
No, so I'm right there with you. I think what would make more sense is the Thiago Santos fight. That's a great fight to make. That could be a perfect main event fight night match to make there. Again, it just hinges on how healthy Thiago Santos is, if he's fully ready to go. If not, I mean, do you do or Anthony Smith, which I think, does he have a fight already scheduled?
I believe he does.
Yeah, I could have sworn I read.
It was a good one too. Let me see.
I could have sworn that Anthony Smith has a fight coming up, but if not, I mean, the fight to make, if it's not the John Jones rematch, or I mean, who knows? I mean, he could want to sit out too.
Anthony Smith is fighting Glover Teixeira on April 25th.
So then he's taking out the equation. So it seems like Thiago Santos would be the next matchup for Dominic Reyes to get him back in there.
Just to throw in real quickly, newly added to the men's pound-for-pound rankings is Dominic Reyes at 15. Dominic Reyes is now 15 on the pound-for-pound rankings.
So the rankings are out then. The updated pound-for-pound rankings.
Yeah.
Where's Connor? I'm sorry, guys.
He's at 9.
Okay.
Yeah, he's at 9.
Thank you.
What's it called? Okay, so what's next for Valentina?
Yeah, okay, so we talked about Jones, we talked about Reyes. What's next for Valentina?
Okay, so you've got Jessica I, who just got absolutely murdered. God bless her heart.
She just beat, yeah.
Caitlin Chukagian, who just lost.
Yep.
And then you've got JoJo Calderwood after that, who I believe might have lost her last fight. Why am I blinking here?
What? So is this they're in the flyweight division, correct?
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. JoJo won against Andrea Lee.
Okay. There's Jennifer Maia as well.
Yeah, Jennifer Maia.
At number 4, Roxanne at number 5.
I mean, who knows? I mean, we don't really know what's next for Amanda Nunes either.
Sure.
Who knows if they try to set something like that up for the summer?
Sure.
I think, let's put it this way. Joanne Calderwood is a great fighter. I like watching her fight. I think she's definitely deserving of being up in the top tier.
Mm-hmm.
However, I just don't see anybody yet making a clear case.
That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at these rankings, and I don't see a clear contender in that division that you can make a really great matchup out of. So I really see 2 options for Valentina. I see one, taking the next contender, whoever it is in that division, whoever's able to make a name for themselves or have a big win,
mm-hmm.
or you do the big fight, the trilogy fight between her and Nunez, whether that's during the summer.
Right.
Those are really the only 2 directions I see. Unless maybe if what's her name? Zhang.
Zhang.
Unless she wants to take on Valentina.
I don't know, man.
I mean, that'd be a tough fight.
She still got fish to fry too.
She does. No, and I know, and that was. I mean, if you look at that division, holy cow!
Yeah,
Jessica,
man. I mean, just look at the top 4. You got Weili,
Rose,
Jessica Andrade,
Tatiana Suarez, my crush, Joanna. I mean, yeah, that's a stacked fucking division. But you're right. If you look at the flyweight, there's not a whole lot of eye-popping names.
Right.
I mean, I see Macy Barber at number 9, but she
just lost.
Yeah,
and
she
she's
just
out
lost
for a while.
So, I mean, the only 2 options that I see, either she takes on another name that's up and coming in her division, or if she wants to run that back with Amanda Nunes and make a really big fight, that'd be awesome. But those are the only 2 options that I see. Are there anyone else from UFC 247 that we can kind of quickly know what would be a next fight for them? I think those were the 3 notable names. I mean, everyone else were kind of in the middle of the pack within their rankings, aren't really top contenders or have lost already.
Right. I think maybe we do. The only one that sticks out to me as far as like interesting stuff goes, I'd like to see Dan Ige versus Sadiq Youssef.
Sadiq. Oh yes, that'd be a good fight.
Yeah,
that'd be a good fight.
Okay, so we got some more fights coming up this weekend.
Yes, we got UFC Rio Rancho.
Mm-hmm.
With Corey Anderson versus
Jan Blachowicz.
I'm gonna mispronounce his name, but I'm gonna try my best.
Let me just put this out there, right? So
yes.
Both of these fighters are good fighters, won a lot of fights in their division, been around for a little bit.
Sure.
However, in the eyes of the fans, I feel like both of these guys get some shit, right? And
Corey Anderson gets a lot of shit, unfortunately.
And really what it comes down to is that these guys don't really put on that entertaining of fights and that they don't really finish, right?
Right.
However, both of these guys' last 2 fights have been exciting, and they're both finishes. Mm-hmm. So please, I'm begging the MMA gods.
Yeah.
Give us a great fight.
Give us a great fight with a great ending.
Yes, especially after what we just watched. You know, if anything, last weekend's fight between John Jones and Dominic proved that you don't necessarily need to finish it to make it a great fucking fight.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. I want a great fight
I agree.
between these 2.
So what's your outlook with these 2 guys here fighting each other?
Yeah, I think Jan has good striking and he's strong. I think Corey's got decent striking and he's got good grappling. I think.
How is Jan's wrestling?
It seems to be more defensive than offensive.
Okay.
But it seems pretty decent.
I wonder if that's going to come into play here in this one with Corey Anderson.
I think it will, but the thing is, I feel like Corey's got that chip on his shoulder now.
Oh yeah,
it really shows after his last fight. I hope that he doesn't come out and go back to his ways of just trying to win the fight, in the sense of like it being a sport, that he's
Correct.
just going in there to win rounds and win the fight. I hope he's going in there to be the killer that he came out against Johnny Walker.
Correct. And so Corey Anderson has been very vocal about him wanting a title shot.
Right.
This weekend is no better time that I can think of in his career to make a statement.
Exactly.
If you make that statement,
right.
my man, I'm telling you,
right.
you'll get your title shot.
Especially because like right now, the only thing anyone's going to talk about in the light heavyweight division is going to be Dominic Reyes now.
Correct.
He just came out to the world.
Yes, he did.
So
yes, he did.
Add that onto the chip onto Corey Anderson's shoulder. Yet another reason to overlook Corey.
Yeah.
Another reason why they're not going to give him his shot.
This is a big opportunity for you.
Come out hungry, my guy.
Big opportunity for you. And if you come out big, there's no guarantee you'll get a title shot.
Right.
But I think you create that buzz that is much needed for you.
You're going to be placed in the conversation. And
exactly, and that's important. So, is it fair for us to make our predictions right now?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take Corey.
I think I'm going to take Corey too. He had a great performance against Johnny Walker, who was a guy everyone was really highly on, and put a stop to that for now. But I'm going to lean on Corey Anderson for this one. I think there's just too much on his table right now for him not to consider. And I bet you his management team are just on his ass.
Yep.
Like, you've got to go out there and make a name for yourself. You can't be this whiny fighter that doesn't get what he wants and, because bad enough in Twitter, they don't like you.
Right.
A lot of people don't like him.
And I think for what it's worth, everyone's going to feel differently about how much this matters. And it, of course, comes down to the situation. But
Sure.
I feel like not just looking at it like from a skills perspective or, a fight history perspective. I think a big thing that matters in these fights is the type of mentality that people come in.
Right.
And that was one of the big reasons why I picked Henry Cejudo to beat Demetrius Johnson going into that second fight. Everyone absolutely called me crazy or that I was just pulling this out of thin air. But I was like, Henry Cejudo is an Olympic level athlete, right? Who is still learning mixed martial arts. And to me, coming into this fight, Demetrius Johnson, I don't know if it's maybe because he was just bored of so little competition,
sure.
or he wasn't really happy with the UFC, whatever it was. But to me, DJ, as amazing and as great as he is, he's an all-time great. To me, just seemed a tiny bit uninterested going into the fight. He just seemed very lackadaisical and like, this is just another fight and yada yada. Yeah. Whereas Henry was coming in like this just rabid, hungry dog, And that fight was incredibly close, but I think what made the difference is just the sheer willpower that Henry had. And I feel like that may come into play in this fight. Yeah. If you take a look at both of these fighters, as I mentioned, they both won their last fight. They both finished their last fight.
Correct.
In their post-fight interviews, right? Jan gave like the most Ned Flanders post-fight interview ever. He was like, "Hey, John, let's go out for ice cream and maybe we can fight afterwards. And, you're a great guy. I'm a great guy. And I've got Polish power and let's fight, Whereas Corey Anderson's like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm fucking coming out here to punch people. Like, he's just, what I mean?
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong. But that's I will admit that's part of my thinking on the outcome of this fight. So I'm picking Corey.
Let's look at some other fights in this card. Notable names in this card: Diego Sanchez.
Diego Sanchez fighting the flashy guy, Michel Pereira, who got so much shit after his last fight. This is the guy that does all the backflips and the breakdancing.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
So I'll be honest, man. It's tough for me to break down this fight, like analytically, just like fighting styles. All I know is that there's going to be some weird shit in this fight. Not just from Michel, but Diego Sanchez himself is a pretty weird guy. So I think this fight is worth watching just on the pure entertainment value.
Okay.
I can't give you a really good prediction on the outcome, though. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Michel Pereira. I'm
going to go with Diego Sanchez.
All right. So we're split on that one.
The next one, the beautiful Montana De La Rosa.
Yes.
She's hot.
So you picking her?
We'll see. I want to hear your opinion on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pick her as well. Mara is pretty good, but I'm gonna take Montana.
Okay.
I don't really know a whole lot about Kazula Vargas.
I was just gonna say that I've never, no disrespect, I don't recognize these two fighters.
But I like Brock Weaver. I saw him on the Tuesday Night Contender Series.
Okay.
And this is the type of guy that you like to see fight.
Sure.
He's not coming out here. He's not coming out here to point fight. He's not coming out here to win rounds. He's coming out to be aggressive, to throw heavy hands, and to win the fight. So.
Okay.
Next
fight we have
Rogerio Bontorin
versus Ray Borg.
Yeah. Ray Borg he lost a tough last fight, or did he win it? Was it? I know it was controversial, but I think he. No. That was the fight versus Casey Kenny. Never mind.
Okay. But
he did win his last fight. Man, a lot of Ray Borg's kind of flown under the radar for quite a bit. Now,
yeah.
For a couple of reasons. He got finished in highlight fashion versus Demetrius Johnson, right?
Yep.
That flying armbar. And then he was scheduled to fight at UFC 229, and then the infamous Conor McGregor incident happened, and he was out for a while with the eye injury. And then the whole thing came out with his poor boy, with the condition. And then his last couple of fights have kind of flown under the radar. I mentioned earlier he lost to Casey Kenny. Nobody really knew Casey Kenny back then. He came out as a perennial contender. So he's been kind of flying under the radar a little bit. So he's on the main card here on ESPN Plus. I hope he puts on a great show. People forget how good this guy is. So I'm gonna pick Ray Borg.
Okay.
And then the fifth fight, a fan favorite in Yancy Medeiros versus one of my personal favorites in Lando Venata.
Okay.
Lando is one of my personal favorites because I just love watching him fight. I'm not necessarily saying he's one of the best fighters. He's actually lost a couple of his fights, and I think he drew 2 fights in a row, if I'm not mistaken. Not in a row, but he 2 out of 3 fights he got a draw in. And he's had a tough go, man. He's only won 2 of his last 7 fights. It's not great, but he's an entertaining fighter to watch, man. He's not the guy. He's not this type of guy to come out and try to necessarily win rounds. He's coming out there to have fun and get a finish.
Okay.
And it's fun. I like watching him fight.
Notable names in the prelims: John Dodson.
Yeah, John Dodson is fighting Nathaniel Wood, who, if you're not privy on, you should do your homework. This guy is really good. Is on an absolute tear. He has finished his last 7 fights. I mean, that tells you as much as you should know. Yeah. Including his 3 he's only been in the UFC for 3 fights now, and he's finished all of them.
Very good track record thus far. Thus far. He's got a big opponent here.
John Dodson is a savvy veteran with heavy hands.
Yeah.
Should be a good fight. Excited.
What else are fights that pop out to you in the prelims? I see Nico Monteo, Casey Kenny.
Yeah, so that's the one that sticks out to me. I think that's gonna be my sleeper for this card is Casey Kenny versus Marab Dvalishvili.
How the hell do you know how to pronounce that name?
I don't
honestly, bro. I struggle.
I think I might have
for my life.
mispronounced that, but I just hear a lot.
I don't even want to try to pronounce that name.
Watch a lot of European soccer.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my sleeper for the card is Casey Kenny versus Marab.
Awesome. So is that all of it for the prelims?
Yeah, and then shout out to Macy Chiazon for stepping in last minute to fight Shanna Young.
Awesome. All right, well, I think that wraps up our preview for UFC Rio Rancho. Last thing we want to talk about is our news segment. Again, we always discuss the latest news in the world of MMA and give our quick thoughts. So the first thing on my list, the report that we talked about, Brian Ortega versus Zabit.
Yeah.
Thoughts about that?
Okay, so, I'm going to have a strong opinion on this one, and I feel like this one...
Careful now. I'm a big Ortega fan.
Right, my ruffles and feathers. It's always tough for me to pick against fighters when I have strong opinions.
Okay.
Especially a guy like Brian Ortega, who is such a great guy.
How do you not love Brian Ortega?
Yeah, man. Got to meet him at the card that we went to. Yep. Such a great dude. Mm-hmm. But, I always say this. You got to get your feelings out of fight analytics. I think, okay, so look, there's all this hype right behind Zabit, and people have pointed out some flaws in Zabit's game, mainly his cardio.
Okay.
He tends to slow down quite a bit. I feel like that's probably going to be a main event, so a 5-rounder, is important.
So you don't see this you don't see the UFC plugging this into a pay-per-view. You see this as being a main event for a fight night.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to. I don't remember which fight they're trying to schedule it for, actually. But anyway, if this turns out to be a 5-round fight, that comes into play.
Sure.
However, I feel like this is a bad matchup for Brian Ortega.
So, I agree with you. This is a very tough matchup for Brian Ortega.
Yeah.
And again, it's hard for us to make any judgments on Ortega because we haven't seen him fight in how long?
A while. Since December of
2018.
It
wasn't 19.
No, it wasn't.
It was
yeah,
2018.
You're right. Wow.
I mean, that was
It's
a
been
while.
A little over a year now. Yeah.
And he was scheduled to fight Korean Zombie in December, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Which, in my opinion, would have been bad also.
That would have been a tough fight.
Yeah.
But he's been gone for a while, so it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what Brian Ortega we have.
Well, let me break this down in case there's anybody wondering why I'm picking so harshly against Brian Ortega. So, I mean, we've discussed this before that at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is whether or not you win the fight. That's the only thing that matters.
Correct.
Did you win the fight, right? He won as many fights as necessary. That's why he got a title shot.
Correct.
He won the fights. But if you go back and watch this tape, right, you would expect a guy that wins that many fights, a guy that was undefeated going into his title shot, would be like some sort of dominant fighter.
A great fighter.
And that's not necessarily what
we didn't see that against Holloway. Yeah.
What we've seen from Brian Ortega on a couple of occasions is him get completely outclassed on the feet and find a way to submit his opponent.
Sure.
Right? And we saw now what happens when he's getting pieced up on the feet and is unable to get his opponent to the ground or lock him up in a submission.
Right.
He just gets worked. That's what happened versus Max. Now,
Yep.
you would have to imagine that a guy that's that young, that's that talented, that has reached those kind of peaks, a guy like that is working, right?
Correct.
So we haven't seen him in a year and a half. My strong expectation is that the next time we'd see Brian Ortega, we'd see him with a more complete game. We'd see him with a better set of striking, right?
That's the key, though.
However, how much improvement could he really put in to match up like against a guy like Zabit, right? And I feel like out of all the guys that he has fought, this is the one where his jiu-jitsu matters the least because Zabit is a talented grappler in his own right. So you put all those things together, that he's going to probably get outworked on the feet and he can't really apply his jiu-jitsu. The same thing happened against the fight versus Max Holloway, except this time he's dealing with a more gifted striker than Max Holloway is. It just spells bad news for me.
It's definitely a tough matchup for Ortega. There's no way around that. And Zabit is just on a tear right now. And again, we haven't seen Ortega fight in over a year. And
this is why I said that the 5 round could make a difference, right? Because something that we have seen from Brian Ortega is that he's a durable guy, right?
He is.
That fight versus Max Holloway got stopped due to doctor stoppage.
Yeah.
It's not because Brian was stopped. It's because the doctor stopped it because of his eye. So hypothetically speaking, let's say he fights against Zabit, even if he gets pieced up for 4 rounds, if Zabit ends up gassing, he could catch him with a submission or something,
That's true.
So
anything can happen.
Right.
But I think we both agree this is one of the toughest fights, if not the toughest fight Ortega is going to take. And this will dictate where he is within that division. Right, this will tell us where he's
really
at.
Is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, I hope to make the fight though, because this type of fight is at the very essence of why the UFC even got created in the first place, right? Is to see if you get a guy like this and a guy like that, and you can't really tell how it would go. Let's put them together, see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Our next thing to talk about is a report, from what Dana White apparently is saying, that he's confident that Masvidal and Usman will be fighting in International Fight Week.
Correct.
Which I believe is in June.
Yes.
Your thoughts on that fucking fight?
Okay. So. Let's put it this way. Usman said something earlier, right? Because the common talking point about this is that the real difference is going to be on the feet, right? Jorge Masvidal on the feet is a real problem for Kamaru Usman. That's the general consensus.
Correct.
And something that Kamaru said, to his credit, he said
he has a wrestling
is the wrestling, but he said that he stood with Tyron Woodley, right? And he said that, Tyron Woodley's a stronger puncher or whatever, which is true. I feel like Tyron's got more power in his hands. But if we're talking about striking as a whole, diversity, angles, stuff like that, I feel like Jorge is the better striker. He throws a bigger variety of
Sure,
strikes
sure,
without lacking power.
sure,
You know, he's got power.
sure.
You know, so to me, I feel like it really comes down to what Jorge's takedown defense is going to be like going into this fight, because I think Kamaru is going to want to go in there and bully him, but I feel like Kamaru will give himself a chance on the feet.
Okay.
So he won't just be shooting takedowns constantly. I feel like Kamaru will probably want to stand on the feet for a little bit.
I think he would want to prove a point.
And then to like, yeah, exactly.
If not, he did already his last fight.
Exactly. And then to really put the nail in the coffin is when I think he'll start using takedowns. So that's really what it comes down to me is when Kamaru decides to stand with Jorge, how much is he going to be able to punish him? A, and B, if he does get to start punishing him, what's his takedown defense like? Right? Because I think if Jorge is able to stay on his feet, he can really win this fight.
I think so too. And I love how Jorge, like we mentioned, like he just has a different attitude from his last couple fights, is that he now goes into fights knowing that he wants to knock people out now. He doesn't want to take it to all the way to the 5th round and leave it to the judge's scorecard, as we saw this past weekend what can happen. It's just such an exciting fight because we saw what Usman is like now, outstriking someone and what he can do, and now having someone like Jorge who can just come off the fight throwing a flying knee or some crazy shit. What is he able to do against a champion that we haven't seen anyone do against him? It's so exciting. None bigger than doing an international fight week, which I'm assuming is going to be a huge card. And then all the buzz into it. I mean, everyone was talking about Conor versus Masvidal as the next fight, but I'm not mad about this one.
Right, me either. I'm excited for this fight.
I'm super excited for this fight.
So here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and this is my early prediction.
You're going to pick already?
Yeah.
You sure you don't want to wait on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we're going to revisit this when it's time for the fight.
Yeah.
Right? So my opinion then is probably going to be a little different. So I just want to throw this out there right now.
Sure.
I feel like I'm going to take an early pick and pick Jorge.
Okay.
Okay, because I feel like he might surprise some people, come out with some good takedown defense. However, if Kamaru wins the fight, I'm going to feel really stupid.
Why is that?
Because it's if Kamaru comes out and does what everybody expects him to do, I'm going to feel like, well, of course he was going to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, every matchup is different, though.
Right.
You know, styles make fights.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so, and this is a totally different fight.
Right. That's just my hunch is that Jorge comes out with some good takedown defense and blows him up on the feet.
Yeah.
But it's very obvious that there's a really good possibility that Kamaru just comes out and does what he did to Tyron Woodley.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a possibility. Yeah. It's a possibility that Usman can get hit as hard as he's ever hit by Masvidal. Ask Nate Diaz that.
Imagine Kamaru rocks Jorge on the feet.
That's a possibility. Yeah. Anything is possible in this fight. Anything can happen. Anything. Yeah. But if Masvidal pulls off this win, my God.
Yeah, man.
That's going to set up one of the biggest fights in history between him and Conor, if that ever happens.
Right.
But, yeah, I'm super excited for this fight. The last thing I have on my agenda is Ali
Abdelaziz.
Yes, the manager, the infamous manager, has advice for Conor. He wants him to go fight Justin Gaethje instead of the Khabib rematch. Quote, "Hey, bitch, go fight Justin if you want to rematch Khabib."
Okay, so
thoughts on this?
We'll if we go back and revisit the episodes before Conor versus Cowboy, where I was really upset at how Conor was gonna play 2019. Or 2020, I should say.
Well, I don't think we've ever talked about our thoughts when Conor finally came back. We weren't recording at that time.
We were not. Yeah.
You were very upset about.
I was very upset. Yes.
Conor taking the fight against Cowboy.
Yeah, I was very upset at Conor fighting Cowboy at 170 and then trying to fight Jorge at 170.
Sure.
And then fighting for the 155-pound title. I was very upset about that.
Sure.
And if we go back and remember, the thing that I was harping on over and over and over again is the correct fight to make is Conor versus Justin, right? Now here we are. We're a couple months later. He fought an outstanding fight versus Cowboy.
I mean, I've never seen Conor as good as he did there. I mean,
and then, right? So that was really fun, and I'm back on the Conor train. The next step in that process was supposed to be Jorge Masvidal. And we're just talking about Jorge Masvidal is very, very, very likely to be matched up against Usman.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus.
So if that's gonna happen, right, and Tony versus Khabib actually happens in April.
We're hoping that happens.
Right.
That's what I'm hoping.
We all know that Khabib takes the summer off because of Ramadan. So is Conor gonna be stagnant? I don't think he wants to.
I don't think so. I think he's adamant about being active again.
So with all those pieces that we just mentioned, it seems like the fight to make is Conor versus Justin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel Conor's gonna piece him up.
Here's the thing.
I really feel that.
A couple of months ago, I would have put my money on Justin Gaethje.
Yeah.
Okay. Not necessarily saying that I'm counting Justin Gaethje out now. I'll be honest. Even after that amazing performance, I'm still pretty much 50-50, right? But holy cow, I will never be shut up as much as.
How many times has that man shut you up?
Conor? I mean, I've never.
Like, how many times have you doubted him in this past fights?
Not a lot. Never.
So
never. Okay, it wasn't that I was doubting him versus Cowboy.
Sure.
It was that I was upset at the way that he was going about it because I didn't really see the vision yet. You know what I mean? And after what Conor, like, I don't know, man. It's kind of like, you know, when there's like a toxic ex-girlfriend or whatever, and you talk all this shit, and then you do like one little thing, and you're like back on the
train.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. But I don't know. Maybe it's because out of frustration or how high I was on Justin at the time, but I really felt like Justin would give him major problems if they fought. So if he comes out and does to Justin what he did to Cowboy. Whoop. I'm done.
Well, okay.
Connor's
I think this fight's gonna be happening at sometime in April.
I hope so. How exciting would that be?
There's no one. So like, and you know me, I'm not gonna be here and lie to you guys. I am one of the biggest Conor fans. It's hard not to like this guy. He's great on the mic. He's creative as fuck. When he did those shoulder strikes, I've been watching MMA for 2-3 years now.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
Right.
And you mentioned you've seen it.
It's very rare.
But have you seen him that effective?
Never.
I've never seen that before.
Shoulder strikes, we were just talking about this earlier before we started recording. What differentiates a significant strike versus a non-significant strike? And the example that I brought up is like whenever fighters are engaged in the clinch up against the cage, you see like these tiny little liver shots, right? That you can see there's no wind up in them. The spot they're landing hurts, but they're not really that hard.
Right.
That to me is what like a shoulder strike is.
Sure.
Like. It's just like this little obnoxious.
The way he did it,
but Conor was changing levels, coming up into
he
a broken
was leaning
nose, broken
into
orbital.
Yes. Yeah. It's just how creative Conor ends just blows my mind. He's so creative when he fights, and he entered these fights with something you've never seen before, and it's hard not to like this guy. He's so exciting. His fights are so exciting. They're spectacles.
So let's hope this fight happens because I don't think this fight goes 10 minutes.
Justin no, I don't think this fight goes beyond the first round. I think both of these guys are gonna walk into it. I'm gonna knock them out within a minute or so, and that's gonna be fucking fireworks. But for me, I think if like I mentioned to you way before, I needed to see Conor focus again, that drive, and it's there. I see it, and we saw it.
Yep.
And I think with this fight here, and he name dropped Gaethje in an interview leading up to the Cowboy fight, that he's on this list, that he's gonna eventually fight him.
Which
I love. All these things that he's talking shit on Twitter. He's like, you're on my list. You're gonna get what's coming to you. And I just see Conor piecing him up, man.
Because I'm gonna call myself
No one's
out.
as good as him in his feet.
I'm gonna call myself out because he wasn't mentioning Justin. He wanted to fight Cowboy. He wanted to fight Jorge. Right? This came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I said Conor is ducking Justin Gaethje.
Well, a lot of people say that.
Right?
Yeah.
The fact that he is saying that now, like, yeah, fuck it. Justin's on the list. Hell yes, dude.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
I don't see any scenario where he doesn't fight Justin, because again, it's like, what's the likelihood of the Tony Khabib fight not happening a fifth time?
I hope it happens, man.
We're praying it happens, but let's just say it happens, and Conor wants to be active. There's no one out there. Him and Dustin Poirier, no.
Right.
Him and who else is in the light heavyweight?
Nobody.
There's nobody. He just beat Cowboy.
Lightweight.
Justin's out there. Him and Justin. If you win that fight, then I think you've done enough, and there's no more argument anymore. If he starches Cowboy the way he did, and he does the same thing against Justin, there's no argument now. He's deserving of his rematch.
Absolutely.
So.
All right,
we'll see
so
what happens, man.
last thing I want to touch on, a bit of sad news, and we didn't get a chance to talk about this before we started recording, but I mentioned earlier that I was watching Rafael Lovato versus Gegard Mousasi, right? What a great story for Rafael Lovato, right? It was his 10th fight in MMA, fighting a guy with like over 60 fights and a guy who's considered, one of the very, very best in the sport in Gegard Mousasi, an older guy, and he wins, right? What a story. Amazing. Well, if you got a chance to watch the Rafael Lovato Jr. episode with Joe Rogan, it came out that he's been diagnosed with a brain condition called cavernoma.
I saw something about that.
Yeah, which is crazy because he only got cleared to fight that fight 2 weeks before the fight. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so cavernoma, I guess it's basically like clumps of malformed vessels, blood vessels in the brain.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what has happened in his diagnosis or what have you, but because of his health conditions, he's had to relinquish the middleweight title at Bellator.
Wow, I did not read that.
Yeah, so now the
I'll look that up.
middleweight title is now vacant. So very, very sad story.
So is he done fighting then?
We don't know, but I mean, if I had to guess, if I was a betting man, I would bet that his career is probably over.
That sucks, man. He just won the title.
He said he was looking forward to a long reign. He's an undefeated fighter.
Yeah, he's undefeated.
Which I mean, I guess you could look at it and be like, well, I mean, that's a great way to retire. Retire on top, retire undefeated after beating one of the best ever, or not necessarily best ever, but one of the best to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really bad. I hope the best for Rafael Lovato.
Me too. Best wishes to you.
I hope he's able to get cleared, and that he gets back in there and is able to regain his title. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's all I got for today.
Yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace. You know what's coming. Fuck you, Manny.